The Teraleak. It sounds like one of the most amazing things to happen. A gray area discovery of old mobile apps and long hidden applications brought back to life due to the diligent efforts of an anonymous army. What it is archive team doing its job. The timeline of how this whole thing happened is worth a study and a leak in itself. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Daniel Boyd, Jeff Atwood, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. The way I became aware of this whole thing was another member of archive team letting me know that there was something called the Teraleak, and that it was involving some sort of archive team project from 9 years ago. In its lifetime, archive team has done literally hundreds of large-scale projects, ranging from a few gigabytes to many dozens of terabytes. It's simply a case that over the years, what goes down can be a simple site, somebody's individual work, or it might be an entire service, some sort of place or repository used by hundreds of thousands of people. And where they can, archive team learns how to download the information and then puts it into a work or a set of archive files to ensure that the Wayback Machine can use it and that individuals can use it for study, recall, research, verification. None of this should be news to you, but over the last 12 or 13 years, so many projects have come and gone, and as a result, we forget about the parameters of this one or that one. In the case of the Teraleak, it took a little while to figure out that they were talking about Project Crash Landing, which was an archiving of a site, Test Flight. If you're an Apple person, this is going to get very confusing very quick. There was a company called Burstly, and they had created a way for people to share mobile apps in a beta form for other people to test. And it was called testflight.com. You would upload your mobile program along with some beta keys, and people with these keys could then load them onto their iPhones for testing. So let's say that you had a new poker game. You would put it on Burstly's Test Flight. You would have a key. You would give it to 1 or 1,000 people. They would evaluate it. The beta would expire, and then you could work with that evaluation. It was basically a harness for allowing the distribution of in-process programs. And a number of clients used it. In fact, hundreds of clients used it. And it was really convenient and so well designed that Apple thought they would take it in-house. They bought Burstly, and within about a year, they shut down testflight.com and then integrated it into iOS, the iPhone operating system, where it became an application called Test Flight. Testflight.com, Test Flight the application, no shared code, no shared data. Upon alerting people that testflight.com was going down, archive team swung into action, a near daily event. They used Google searches and web crawls, and they were able to get a whole list of testflight.com URLs. Utilizing this, they downloaded everything they could find at testflight.com, put them into a series of web archive files, WARCs, uploaded them to the Internet Archive, resulting in about 1.2 terabytes of data, and then forgot about it. In fact, it appears everybody forgot about it. It was just up there, the Test Flight crash land. Again, I have to stress, this happens all the time. The archive team is tireless in tracking down sites that are on their way out and grabbing piles of their publicly available data and then storing it for later reference. Testflight.com, Project Crashland, no different. 9 years later, some people in the Angry Birds modding community discovered that the Crashland project had some beta files from various releases of potential Angry Birds projects. They had gone through and they had discovered links were still available via the Wayback Machine, and they started downloading and trying out beta Angry Birds programs. Now, when you deal with older versions of iOS, you sometimes don't make the programs run. You just scan through the programs and find the assets, the graphics, the music, the sound, and you reproduce it or create ersatz versions of what you think the original probably looked like. If you're feeling particularly energetic, you can recreate the environment, sideload in these mobile apps, and try them out. Because they're betas, they might not work at all. They might only be simple tests and then they fail. Maybe they're incomplete. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 levels. Maybe it's waiting for a cheat code to actually do anything. Regardless, the Angry Birds modding community started to go a little wild, discovering that not only were there all of these Angry Birds betas sitting in this pack, there were betas for thousands of other applications. In fact, 76,000 different mobile applications were discovered in this pile. Somewhere in there, it jumped communities. It left Angry Birds modding, and it went into the world at large. Here, it fell into the hands of people who like clout, not really understanding where the data came from and not really spending any time to research it. They announced it as leaked information, calling it the Teraleak, a terabyte of leaks, and as a result, got some news. And by got some news, I mean they got a lot of news. They got an enormous amount of stories, of writings, of people speculating on where this had come from, where the hackers had found it, where it was hidden away, and where it had been discovered. It took me a little while to get involved, and I tried a fool's game. I tried to indicate this wasn't really a leak in the standard sense. This was a pile of publicly accessible data located inside of search engines that were downloaded all at once upon the closing of a site. They were, up to the moment they were taken down, accessible to the general public. Archive team doesn't need to hack. Archive team has enough data as it is, just scanning sites that are going down without having to do weird subterfuge. We just look very, very closely at a site. People started adding Teraleak search engines. People started talking about this leak, acting like it was something that had been kidnapped, bundled up, taken out in the dead of night, and squirreled away until 9 years had passed. None of that was true. When I got involved in the conversation, it got a little weird, because there were people who had worked on Angry Birds who, while they didn't really agree that it was a hacking in the standard sense, they were still pretty annoyed that this data was out there. Regardless of how it had been given, to some people, the term leak simply refers to things that weren't supposed to be in the public getting into the public. Under this very general description, which it appears is contemporary in what people are doing, leaving private materials out for the trash and somebody picking it up is a leak. Mistakenly sending somebody an email of stuff that wasn't supposed to be anywhere is a leak. This change in vernacular, this adding of drama and subterfuge into a basic transaction caught me off guard. I tried my best to fight it back in the same way that people try to indicate that hacking is something that can be good, but yet somehow hacking as a verb almost always falls to the negative. I tried to indicate that this was simply a good case for how keeping things around in archives have payoffs years or decades later. Archive team has never gathered this much data with the intention of it never being read again. The idea has always been that as machines and people get better at reading old data, they will explore it. They will find things that were in there that they didn't know they needed at the time. Recently, I've become interested in these little banners, these 88-pixel wide banners that were very popular back in the early parts of the web, and how many of them are findable again. There's thousands of them in the Wayback Machine, stuck at the bottom of pages and usually called something that lets you figure them out. Collecting them and turning them all into a complete collection standing on its own with all of these different moving banners coming onto the screen at once was never intended for the original work. But I get to do it because of a series of not deleting, of packing things up, and working with analysis engines to find them. Here, now, in the world of the Teraleak, there are all sorts of repercussions and things that are being learned because of it. But I'm proud of Archive Team for doing this work when it was needed, of gathering up old mobile software history before it was deleted in one swoop for Apple's upgrade. In these programs, which are everywhere, there's no getting them back, we see techniques and aesthetics and approaches and phrasings that will place them all in a specific time. A time of the early 2010s when at that moment, a place called Test Flight provided us insight into what programs on an Apple iPhone could be. This is but one small fraction, one facet of an infinite diamond of knowledge that's waiting for the light, being brought to the world by people unknown, programs unwritten, and with a potential to be as great a reference and rediscovery as anything else we've found, sitting in shelves, disk drives, and boxes. May we one day look forward to the Teraleak. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, thanks to James Bekoyanu, Mark Pilgrim, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dileep Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Symbionts, Benjamin Guts, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. I suppose there's going to be some fallout from this. Or maybe it was a 10-day wonder. People discovered a few new programs, learned about a few icons and graphics for systems dropped and forgotten, and maybe somebody working on the comprehensive history of Angry Birds got just the information they needed. Part of the magic of archives is you don't know what part they're going to play in the future. All you can do is carefully, methodically, and with great heart and intent, pack them away for an uncertain, but no doubt interesting, future.